Wyoming Badlands, June 2nd, 1899. A dark, wet night. And then, a boom. Not just a sound, but a force. A force that rips steel apart and blows the sides of an entire railcar clean off. From the sky, what looks like confetti begins to rain down, scorched and rippling. As the smoke clears, the men responsible can only stare. What had started out as the perfect heist had just become a monumental disaster. To understand how they got there, standing there surrounded by bits of burning money falling to the ground, you have to understand who was the man at the center of it all. Butch Cassidy. By the late 1890s, his name was a whisper in the wind. An infamous reputation preceded him. His signature wasn't bloodshed, it was cunning and bravado. To some, he wasn't a villain. He was a counterpunch against the powerful railroad and banking monopolies squeezing the life out of everyday working-class people. His gang, the Wild Bunch, was a collection of specialists. There was the notoriously hot-headed Harvey Kid Curry Logan, Ben Kilpatrick, the tall Texan, and of course, the quiet and lethal Harry Longabore, the Sundance Kid, whose skill with a pistol was already the stuff of legends. For years, the gang had been hitting banks and making a killing, but as the turn of the century approached, the game was starting to change. More secure safes and new alarm technologies made those types of jobs too risky, so instead, the Wild Bunch turned to railway robbery. And in the summer of 1899, they turned their eyes to the Union Pacific Railroad. Its mobile railway cars transported the money and valuables they could no longer get access to directly through the banks themselves. The chosen location was a remote stretch of track near Wilcox, Wyoming. A small wooden bridge created a natural choke point. For days, the Outlaws scouted the area, timed the train, and planned their escape. Every detail had been rehearsed, because a single misstep, one miscalculated move, and it could all unravel in an instant. They stashed fresh horses in close proximity so they could make a clean getaway. The trigger signal would be a red lantern, faking an emergency on the tracks. Once the train had stopped, they would uncouple the passenger cars, isolating the engine and the express car, no civilians involved. As they lay in wait on that rainy night, everything was set according to plan. And just after 2 a.m., the headlamp of the overland flyer cut through the darkness. The gang was ready. As the train approached the bridge, a masked man swung a red lantern, and the engineer, William Jones, brought the locomotive to a screeching halt. Before the crew could process what was happening, their cab was swarmed by men with rifles. The robbers ordered the crew to pull the engine and express car forward across the bridge, leaving the passenger cars behind. Then, to ensure no one followed, they set a charge of dynamite on the bridge supports, damaging it just enough to delay any pursuit that could be coming behind them on the line. With the express car now isolated, the real work could begin. The messenger inside the car refused to open the reinforced door. It was a brave move. Instead, the gang had its own plan for getting the door open: dynamite. The first charge blew open the side door. They stormed in. The messenger had been dazed. He was unable to give them the combination. The clock was ticking, so they used another stick of dynamite. This one cracked the safe, but the door still wouldn't give. They start to get impatient, greedy, so they wire another charge, a much bigger one this time. Turns out, though, that it was too big. The safe and the express car holding it are both obliterated, and the gang is left standing in the dark, watching their prize, now burned, shredded, and turning to ash before their eyes, rain down from the sky. A scramble in the dark ensues. They stuff handfuls of charred paper into their bags. A once perfect heist had been blown to smithereens in an instant. The gang galloped off into the night with what little they could salvage. Reports suggest it could have been upwards of $30,000 or more, but it was a disastrous victory. They had left a trail of destruction and, more importantly, evidence. Though the robbers had cut the telegraph wires, the train crew limped their broken engine to the town of Medicine Bow and sounded the alarm. Within hours, a posse of nearly 100 men, led by Sheriff Joe Hazen, was on their trail. The Union Pacific Railroad posted a staggering reward, $3,000 for each robber, dead or alive. The famed Pinkerton Detective Agency was brought onto the case, and the gang's mistake gave the detectives the evidence trail they needed. The stolen banknotes, previously difficult to trace, were now uniquely marked, scorched and torn by the explosion. As members of the gang began spending their damaged money in saloons and hideouts, the Pinkertons connected the dots. The very prize they had risked everything for had become their incriminating downfall. The blast at Wilcox set off a resounding ripple effect that the Wild Bunch couldn't outrun. The combined pressure from Union Pacific and the Pinkertons brought the full heat of the law down on them. The manhunt was relentless, forcing the gang to split up and search for cover. Over the next year, though, the law started picking them off one by one. George Flatnose Curry was killed in a shootout at Rattlesnake Creek, Utah, while attempting to steal livestock. Harvey Kid Curry Logan killed several officers along a revenge-laden rampage before he reportedly took his own life with his revolver. And Ben Kilpatrick was eventually captured and sent to prison on a 15-year sentence. The investigation was heating up, and law enforcement was starting to close in on the rest of the gang. Because of this, in 1901, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, with Sundance's companion Etta Place, were forced to flee the country for Argentina. The blunder at Wilcox had triggered a chain of events that destroyed their gang and drove them from the very country they had once seemingly ruled. Their run as kings of the Wild West was effectively over, not with a blaze of glory, but in a desperate attempt to escape the consequences. The Wilcox robbery became an unofficial symbol of the outlaw life. It was glamorized and idealized by many who were living in poverty and felt cheated by the system, and, ironically, it cemented the gang's legendary status. The official story says Butch and Sundance met their ultimate end in a shootout in Bolivia in 1908, but that remains one of the West's most enduring mysteries. DNA tests on remains thought to be theirs have since been inconclusive, leaving the door wide open for rumors and conspiracies. Some, including Cassidy's own sister, claimed he returned to the United States and lived for decades under a different name, living a full life and eventually dying peacefully of old age. But no matter how the story truly ended, it all seems to come back to Wilcox, to that single, reckless, fateful moment. A realization, perhaps, that for an outlaw like Cassidy, what was thought to be his biggest failure was also his most notable and famous moment, proving that the line between a legendary score and a legendary failure is truly in the eye of the beholder. The legend of the Wild Bunch is a dramatic chapter in the history of the American West. If you find the real stories behind these legends as fascinating as we do, subscribe and ring that notification bell. We have many more stories just like this that we're excited to share. And if you have suggestions for which stories we should cover next, let us know in the comments below.